Hi, Bonnie.
Hi, Carolyn.
This is my friend Bonnie Broitzman, and we met 37 years ago at a watercolor workshop and liked each other's work and decided, wow, we got to stay friends and encourage each other, nurture what we're doing, and we have done that. We, in fact, just recently spent 2 weeks together painting. So I just knew this gal's got talent. She was teaching in the public schools, she had this formal background, and what I needed was I needed somebody to help me teach on location at my international trips. So I talked her into an early retirement. And we have done over 30 international workshops together. We have many planned right now. We're doing 3 together this year alone. And so I'm going to, at this time, turn over this tutorial to Bonnie, who has like 2 different styles of working. The one that we just talked about, which involves draftsmanship and drawing and painting, and the other, which is a very personal style, an intuitive style. And I think that's so unique, I wanted to share that with you. So she's going to develop a painting into what she calls a quiet, intuitive space.
Thank you.
Take it away, Bonnie.
All right, thank you. Well, thank you, Carolyn. The very first time we met, she was drawing next to me at Riker's Boatyard, and I could see that this gal could really draw boats. And I really wanted to get to know her, and I'm really grateful for this long-term relationship because it's kept me, who was involved in a number of other things in my life, including a family, kept me sketching and painting and keeping myself really, really concentrating on what it was I wanted out of being an artist. So this is one of our little wonderful spots. It was raining, there was an umbrella, I sat under it and drew this delightful little church in about an hour and a half, and it just has become a sweet memory of this wonderful place that we had lunch. So it was a great experience. So one of the things in drawing, you can draw the personal thing, which is just plain of one building or one thing, zero in on location. Or you can take a real difficult subject like in Venice with lots of buildings and lots of things going on, and this is where the skills come on. This is why it's nice to work with a teacher who can help you with perspective and help you in composition and throw all these things together. So it's a really good idea to jump into workshops any chance you get. Here's an example of why in watercolor we have to be so concerned about the white paper. You have to almost become in love with the white paper so that you can leave these white centers that really glow. So the paper becomes a real asset and a friend of yours when it's white like this. And so we really can work all these other colors around and make a foil. So in all the paintings you see of mine, you'll know that my very first intention is to have this white space that goes through and glows mostly in the center, which has led a lot to the kind of personal work that I do that has an inner kind of glow coming through. And I believe that the watercolor media, because it's so fluid and the paper is so white, that it lent itself to developing the style that I have today. These next 3 images show an on-location experience. Again, I want to repeat that you can sit right in the location. This is a lovely place in Spain that Carolyn and I go to. They're a fabulous courtyard. You can sit right there on your porch. I slept in this house, sat in this chair for many days, drinking coffee and sketching. And I can sit right there and make a memory. And that's why I love painting. It makes a memory of where I've been, and it becomes, like Picasso said, a diary of your life. This is one from Greece, and I love putting figures in. It's a great way to move this around, but again, notice what I first told you. I want my whitest white in my center of interest. So this headdress here just stands right in the middle, dark underneath, dark and around, everything radiating from the figures, and these delightful old images of the stones and stuff that you can just play with and move the brush around. It becomes really, really fun. Now, those of you who've been playing with paint for a long time and have had a chance to do all the different subjects can throw it all into a market scene. So I'm sitting right out in the open in Spain here, and all these people are milling around, so I have to know how to do people. So I just do the people. They're not going to stand still for me. Throw in the color, the design, and some negative painting. So all the skills of watercolor, pow, right in this on location 2-hour painting. I'm going to go back to the workshop scene. And this is a painting of mine from, actually we had a model and a delightful young woman, and we were just sitting there and drawing. So it shows that this years of university experience in drawing and painting and being involved with the arts, that I was able to sit in front of a model and put a painting together. So sometimes there is no background, and the white is that. I'm not saying that I'm making a law out of having the whites in the center. The reason I'm showing you this one is that I want you to understand that originally painting and writing and drawing was like this. You had a white background, you had a pencil, you were writing your words, drawing your images. So this is what's called a positive image. It's right on that surface, and that's what it's about. So that now we have foreground and background, or we have subject and ground. Here's another one I did that was from a memory of myself as a little 9-year-old, and it has a lot of meaning for me. So I was just kind of looking at some pictures of me. So this is really an intuitive portrait, because I'm just adding things and making this 9-year-old child in a soft dress, summertime obviously. And again, this is the subject and then the quiet background. Now we're going to jump into what I call a transitional piece. I was in Costa Rica painting for 2 months and did a number of these, and I made up my mind that I wouldn't paint anything unless I saw it, because I was there to see the animals and that. So the first thing I saw was this owl-eyed butterfly, which is a real butterfly, and then this is the host plant that lays its eggs on. So I had these two realistic things in, and then I looked at the jungle. You imagine what the jungle looks like, it's just a tangled mess, and I said, oh well, I might as well just play with the paint, light, dark, medium, and whistle this around and pull this out and drag this and add a little warm and add a little cool. And it was really my first experience of what I said, well, what difference does it make? I can play with the paint, I can enjoy it. It doesn't have to be a particular thing. It can just be the feeling of the jungle and the tanglement and that. And you know that that butterfly is living in the jungle. This was my very first, what I called intuitive flower picture. I snuck into the studio before all the students came, thinking I could get a full sheet done. But we have those early birds that came running in there. And I had to separate myself from the chatter and the questions and the noise and the chairs moving and stay centered so I could continue painting the picture that I had envisioned, which was loose and airy and delightful and moving and energy. All the things that I love. I'm just bringing all this together. It's like those cooks that just find what's in the cupboard and stick it in there and make it delicious. And I was able to do it. So I call this a real pivotal painting, because I was able to stay centered and complete the painting even though there was a lot of outside activity happening. The other thing in intuitive painting that's a really interesting thing, and I got this from watching a choir teacher when I was teaching middle school, is that he'd say, let's see how soft we can get, let's see how loud we can get. And I chose to do that in these experimental paintings. So here I'm just clashing and banging and bringing these bright colors together. Say, just how vivid and energetic can I make a painting? And then, like all playful things, it can just melt into the background and you can pull it. And there's examples of wet line drawing where you just drop a wet line in there. There's examples of negative painting. There's examples of wet into wet, of course, to start it. There's examples of cutting around with the negative painting. So all the kinds of things you'll see me do when I do my demo are illustrated in this. But again, notice how those whites are right smack there. And then notice these corners. I'm going to show this over and over again, how I knock out the corners. And you'll hear a lot of my dialogue, very similar to Carlin's dialogue, because we've been painting together for 37 years. So, and we teach together. So we try to keep our dialogue and our meaning of our words so that our students will know this is what we're talking about. What's new in this intuitive painting is what I like to call a dynamic energy. So there's a pull and a push, and there's a come and there's a go, and there's a bright and there's a dull. So that's what makes the actual subject of this painting is energy and not a particular topic, except for these really look like flowers. Going back to this one and a number of flower pictures, what Carlin saw, this is really important. You do 5 or 6 of these because it's a journey. It's like journaling, not one journal page, but 5 or 6 or 7, and put them together and look at them. Well, Carolyn was looking at 5 of my paintings with me, and she's noticed, she said, Bonnie, what's all this falling in the middle? Why are they all dropping off the bottom of the paper? I said, gee, I don't know. I really don't know. Every single painting, everything that were florals, they all dropped like they were in a bouquet, like they should be in a vase. And then 6 months later, I was back in graduate school and I was writing a paper on Georgia O'Keeffe, and I ended up putting this up the paintings up on an easel and looking at them and then typing some words. I put the centerings on my computer and they became shape poems. And the painting and the words were all one piece, and that was the main part of my thesis paper. This is one of many, and the one that shows the vase the most. So if the words become the vase, the flowers fall down into the vase. And the poetry then becomes the opposite in explaining it. And the interesting thing is when I have a big show, I can frame this little piece and hang it next to the large painting, and people who like to read the words and know what my intention was when I painted it, because they are abstract, it makes a fuller presentation. So I actually like this a lot when I'm having an abstract show. This is kind of a fun painting. It's the one behind me. It was a full sheet that happened after I had painted 4 realistic pictures of gladiolas, because my mother asked me to paint one for over her couch. Anyway, I said, I wonder if I know enough about gladiolas after painting 4 that I can just paint the spirit of a gladiola flower. And this is what came out of my wet and wet experience. Look again, the white in the middle, the corners, every one, different, that. And then when I set it up and I went to put this in here, I remembered how much I love to paint and what a joyous experience it is to paint like this on this wet and wet experience of the fluid watercolor. So this is called Glad Whisper. I trust the process of my paints and the fluid nature of the watercolor to align myself, my energy with a greater creativity. Together we brush pure color into a sacred container that whispers joy, peace, hope, and love, and blossoms with great generosity. If you get excited about this process of wet and wet, spontaneous painting, I'm going to make a recommendation, as I did for probably 3 or 4 years, do lots of paintings with the complements. So I did a number of yellow and purple. This one here that you're looking at is orange and blue, and also the red and green. And I would start with the yellow and purple because that's the lightest and the darkest. It gives you the most chance for value and excitement. This blue and orange gives you a wonderful chance for browns moving to grays, depending on how much blue is in the orange or how much orange is in the blue. But you get these wonderful nuances, and you're not battling a riot of color. It just takes 2 different colors that complement each other and make things lovely. So it's a really good way to start if you haven't got a lot of background in color. Now after doing maybe close to 100 flower paintings and different abstract versions of different color schemes and different ideas and different values and different amounts of realism, I was meditating on how beautiful flowers were, and I was reading a book that was talking about the origins of flowers and how beautiful they were when the idea of flowers came to the first creation of flowers in the universe. And I thought of that, and as I started to paint, I knew I needed to have an ocean. They were already here. I knew we had to have sky. That was already there. But somehow or another, how did this wonderful energy just burst out into flowering forms? And so I came up with this full sheet, which I really enjoy, and it has this energy coming from a greater source, plowing down, struggling if it's going to be round, struggling if it's going to go out here, struggling if it's going to curl or leaf, and then the seed itself, and then the sprout, and then the coming to the earth, and then all these different flowers and flowering forms. And that was just what I call theme painting. So I might sometimes just take a theme, and I usually work in a series, so I would do 5 or 6 pictures on that one theme, and they would all come out. There's 5 paintings in this series, there's 5 paintings in most of the flower series, like I mentioned on the gladiolas. So it gives you a chance to explore light and dark. It gives you bright and bold, a larger, more universal theme like this, or a quiet and personal, more intimate scene. So that you're all in control of, and it gives you lots of subject matter to explore. Now I want to share with you what Carolyn and I did together in Florida in January. So this is a January series. So where you live and the colors of where you live and the energy of the place that you're in can affect these intuitive paintings. Because remember, everything's coming in, and how are you responding to your environment and what's coming out of you. So it's very important to have a sense of where you are. You're not, totally objective about yourself. You shouldn't be, because what you should do is this is an intimate experience, and you're trying to express your interior feelings and what you love and what you care about, and the colors and the line and the shape that makes and moves you and that entertains you. Yourself personally. You're not part of an art group in this case. You are really expressing your individualism. And this painting came out. Carlin said, paint one of those loose, juicy, intuitive paintings for me, Bonnie. And this is what happened. And I really love it because it's just getting down to Florida from cold Minnesota. And I've got flowers, and I've got green, and I've got blue. And look at that. It all just came right out of me and said, oh, I'm entertained. Now I'm filled with color. So once I start a series and I start to explore it, I looked at the last one and it was really right in your face. It was really large shapes. And so I wanted to take this one a little bit more organic, and you see that I'm actually working with pieces of flowers and pieces of leaves and pieces of bright colors and just this intense, hyper almost, bright colors that happen in Florida when you're really looking at a flower garden. So, and then this had a little piece of beauty in it. I had started in Florida with a number of realistic bird pictures, so I really had birds in my memory and in my visual interpretation, and I looked back at it, and wow, all of a sudden, there he was. You see him? There's a bird right in here that surfaced without me even knowing about it, and I always call that kind of the gift of the intuitive painting. It takes me to the next level. It's what I was thinking of unconsciously that is now surfacing in a visual image. Now, this was just painted last week, and it brought together a lot of things that Carlin and I were dialoguing about. One was a path of light, where this path is coming through and going out, both from top to bottom and from left to right. But it has the pure white symbol in the middle. Now this is pretty abstract. And when these yellow shapes were just big pieces of yellow from the introduction of being bold enough to put on abstract color, big patches of color all over on this wet, just to get this going. And Carlin says, Bonnie, what are you going to do with those? They're kind of boring. I love that when she talks to me like that. Because I'm pushing this in and pushing this in, and I get all of these forms, and I get a much better painting after Carlin has critiqued it. Now notice that this is yellow and purple, but I'm not afraid to bring in the blues. I'm not afraid to push that purple to red. I'm not afraid to push it, bring in an orange to be relating to the yellow. So we're going to talk a lot about that when I'm actually doing the demo, or you'll see it, because as I'm working on this, it's better for me not to talk. So I'm kind of doing this as an introduction to what's going to happen when I'm painting. I'm going to pull you back to compliments, because I'm going to be painting a yellow and purple picture. This is one of the first workshops Carlin and I ever did together in Guatemala. And whenever I paint something that really feels warm and inviting, or a cathedral or a church or something, I love to throw in some yellow and purple. It's just yellow and purple as complements seem to be the most sacred. You'll find that many artists are now painting yellow and purple in really important large buildings if you take a look at American Artists and other magazines. But notice again how this path of light takes you right up through and leads you to the top. It's another technique of getting people to feel that things are elevated, lighter, heightened, whatever words you choose to talk about that. So yellow and purple is really important. This is an earlier yellow and purple I did, and this is a real easy thing to do as when you're learning color. One takes a back seat to the other. I mean, you can think of it in another way. If the yellow is coming in here as the main subject, this lion coming in here, bringing that, and these flowers coming together. If the yellow is the accent, then you're going to obviously need more purple. So one color is you use more of, and one color you use less of, and that's called color dominance. So when I was thinking about this and had done a big yellow and purple flower picture, which is now sold, so I couldn't bring it, but I'm going to read you the poem from this. So this is a picture that went with my Georgia O'Keeffe paper that I was doing, And it was a full sheet. And again, yellow is accented and the purple and frames it all the way around. And I call it the splendor of compliments. And I think it explains why I love painting with compliments. Do not see these flowers as too large, but move like Georgia O'Keeffe to the language of line, shape, and color, where colors play in harmony. Purple glows in yellow's hue, and yellow is framed by purple's delight. Compliments collaborating as yin and yang, not as either or, but both and. Going back to this last month's work, which is a series, and it's the first time I think that I've done really, really hot, intense, warm paintings, and in the same series, chosen to go and actually do cool and refreshing paintings. And I'll show by putting two together how entirely different and yet similar the process is, whether you choose to make a warm painting or a cool painting. Here the blue is dominating the orange. Again, you have the white. Again, you have the light. And then I have what I call negative painting in here, which everyone calls negative painting, where the lights come forward as the white, because remember in watercolor you don't have the white paint, and you push back by painting those sections darker. And I love to do that, and that will actually be the last piece of my demo. It's a negative painting. I think I can safely say that this picture is out there. It came from an inspiration in our workshop this week because a gal had said, oh, we're going to have a lunar eclipse tonight and we're going to have a shooting star and all that stuff. So I'm hearing all that, and it's a perfect example of how I take a clean piece of paper and all that stuff is just right at the surface of my unconsciousness, and I wanted this big, bold, sweeping path of white through the center, and I ended up doing this picture. I never would have thought of that, I don't think, without this listening to someone talk about how special last night it was going to be in the lunar eclipse. So it was really fun. And I want to show this because it's taking it sort of to the biggest boundary. This is a universal theme, you know, stars and moons and eclipses. And yet down here I have these earth tree limbs or branches or grasses, so it can be water and grasses, it could be sky, it could be tree limbs and the sky is showing through it, so people can interpret it any way they want to. But this is a really important lesson in intuitive painting and most painting that you look at today. If this picture is blue, which this obviously is, we start with warms underneath because these can't be dead whites. They can't be just plain white. They have to be tender whites, they have to be cool whites, they need to be warm whites, and you want to have all those different things in white. So we want to, and most people in Wet and Wet will start with the opposite color. Since the blue paintings for sky and night, I had put some warm oranges and yellows underneath. Then I just plowed in the blues, but look at the number of blues. When I say the word blue, I don't mean just blue as a primary color. I mean blue and all of its warm relatives moving into the violets, and I mean blue and all of its cool relatives moving into here like manganese. So I have a full range of a warm and cool painting within the framework of a cool painting. So even though it's a cool painting, lots of warm colors are there, just like the poem, to accentuate and frame it. Now, as part of our fun together, Carolyn decided to do a little tutorial on some of this opposite idea. First, a lot of people think of running through the picture with their shadows and their darks, and the darks will take you through and travel around the picture. And of course, in an abstract, that it's a journey, it's energy, so you have to travel around. So the main thing I'm looking at doing is making sure that this is lovely, this is lovely, this is lovely, this is lovely, and this is lovely. And then it all works as one. So it's an entirely different thing from that first portrait I showed you. So again, the corners are out. Again, I'm saving the whites, which I like to do anyway because I like to keep it clean and light, and then come in with just a few darks. So Carolyn was talking about this and showing it to us, and I said, wow, I'll do that. She said, well, it's a collage. I said, ooh, I don't do collage. But I did a collage, Carolyn. She was proud of me that I'm showing you this right before I jump into my demo, because what I want you to notice is that you don't have to have a theme. It's perfectly acceptable for you to do a design and you're just working on the elements of art and the principles of art, and you don't have to worry if it has a theme or what someone says, what is it? It's just plain loveliness. It's line, shape, and color in a harmonious one painting. So that's what we're going to do. See you soon. Well, we're ready to begin. And as I had shown you in the number of examples, that an intuitive painting can go many different directions. Remember, there isn't a subject at this point. The actual content of this painting is within me. Some of it I don't even know where it's coming from. It's just going to come forward and it's going to express itself on the paper, and I'm going to recognize it. I recognize it by, is it lovely? Is it beautiful? Is this an interesting line? Is this an interesting shape? Do these colors work together? And I try to stay loose and abstract as long as possible. In order to stay in that feeling and motion and energy of this particular piece, I have to be completely ready with all my supplies. I can't go take a telephone call. I can't run around and do this. I can't do that. I have to have this stuff right here. And that's the way I worked for many, many years. It's a little easier now that I've done it a lot. So I start with bringing out a few fresh colors when I have an intentional color scheme. And as I had said before, I'm going to use yellow and purple because yellow is the lightest. It's 2 on a scale of to 10, and purple or up to permanent magenta is almost the darkest, so it allows you to have the biggest voice in value, which is very important. So I'm going to start by just topping off a few colors, and I want you to notice that my palette is set up like a color wheel. It's been this way for 20 years. I absolutely love it. So I'm topping off. I have Aurelian as my main yellow. I want to top that off. I have some Windsor here. I want that topped off, so I've got some real fresh, clean, that hasn't been tainted, that's one of Carlin's words, by some other color. And then, of course, I love this cobalt violet, and I'm going to be doing yellows and purples, so I want to make sure that I have a nice range. So look at this palette. This is a Quiller palette. So that my true primary, which I consider Aurelian, Carlin has her Windsor there, and then I have my red and my cobalt blue for transparent for my primaries, and I have a space for my secondaries. Orange lives here between its 2 parents, yellow and blue, then create all the greens, and then blue and red I'm here into the purples with the red and the blue. So I have some fresh paint so I can get some vibrancy and some energy. I have it as a color wheel. I can pull it out. The other thing I do when I mix a color is I pull it right from the 2 parents and let it live right in its doorstep. So when I'm using this primary yellow, I bring it out right on its doorstep and I keep it there. Because my paintings are so subtle that I actually will just take a tiny bite of that with another bite of this, and I get these subtle colors. So having this paint right outside its doorstep is a really good idea. I have a water container that I keep, one is clean and one to rinse my brush. That way when I get into the very final and I want real pure colors, I always have a pure water to come right in here and keep it very, very clean. I have a towel because a thirsty brush, moving this paint across this paper is really important. There'll be many times you'll see me taking the water out of the brush so I can move the paint. So I have a number of flat brushes. These are my favorites. I will paint 90% of the picture with these 3 brushes. I have my 1.5 and my 3/4 and also even my 1 inch. Then I have just a few rounds because I mostly am a shape maker, so I don't need many rounds. But this liner brush is what I'm going to dip in the water, and you'll see me get those white lines that are real evident in these abstracts. I start out on a non-porous surface, so I'm going to have the paper right on this plastic. And then when I'm ready to dry it off, you'll see me slip the board underneath. I never lift the picture up. If I lift this wet painting up like this, I'll have it right on the tabletop. So I will be bringing this board in and sliding it under the paper so that I don't move it at all. So you'll see that happen. So I'm having everything ready. so I can just start and not think at all about my supplies. And remember, I've been doing this for a number of years, so it's kind of like a little bit of a ritual, the way that I do it. And you'll find your own ritual as you paint these, if this interests you to paint intuitively. You'll find what inspires you, what gets you ready, what settles you, what centers you. A camera probably doesn't. But we're doing this, so I hope you'll see this with some soft eyes and say, well, she's doing this, you know, and talking at the same time. I'll try to keep that to a minimum because then I can concentrate on what's happening in the picture. But I think the surprise will be is how quickly the paint goes on and how quickly I manipulate it. So you can easily get this done. If you go to work at 9 o'clock, you might do one before you go to work. So it is something that you can do real spontaneously. First thing I do, because I love the glazing on the paper, is I check to make sure that I have the front. As soon as I can read arches and know that this is my soft glazed part, I want that. If I turn it upside down, use a large brush I just used for water, and this is important to my ritual, I just move back and forth down the paper so I don't miss any, and this begins putting me in alignment with rhythm. The basic idea that I'm working with is rhythm. So I had some yellow paint on my table. I'm going to hold this up. It's going to allow it to drip off. And I'm going to grab a couple of tissues and I'm going to mop this up. You'll see me mopping a lot. That's to keep the bleed backs away. Now, I have a watermark on this half sheet and I want it down here. I would rather not have it at the top. You see how the paper stretches because of the water. I have to ask it to lay down, take a nap, and enjoy this process. By going the opposite direction, I make sure I don't miss any. Because painting is non-linear, I have a choice to make now. Just like your 2 feet, you can start out on your left, you can start out on your right. Should I knock down my corners first to make sure they're knocked down and pushed back? Or should I start with the center, bum, 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 and worry about the corners as I have a whole palette full of blended color? It doesn't matter. It's an option. Because it's so important in having the white in the center to me and that white passage, it's kind of a good idea for me to knock out the corners so that they're not interfering with this beautiful white in the center. So let's start there. Using a big brush, pulling this, and I'm going to start with a number of yellows. So this is in the corner. Use a little cool yellow. Soften this one. I'm going to come and move around here. Throw a little someplace else. Then I'm going to start even using some of these purples and violets, because that's going to be in the paper. That's the color scheme. So let's knock that down. Let's give it a little neighbor bite here, a blue. Put one of these in here. And then let's give it a little warmer. A few places. And yellow can even move to green a little. So if you haven't done this before, just to soften that background is a really good idea. I can switch to a round brush if I want to have punch in the middle. Let's start with our yellow. I don't want to get this eyeball shape, so I'm going to drop this down. And I am going to show you what's really important in this. So you see I've got Winsor yellow, I've got Aurelian yellow, I've got Quin gold, I've got Winsor Newton orange. All of those are going to go on here. Watch this shape grow as I change the yellows. So here's the Winsor, really bright. Here's the Aurelian. I don't even have to clean my brush. Here's the Quin gold. Let it grow. And here's the Winsor Newton orange. This is a passage that grows. It becomes a shape within a shape, and it allows that shape to just explode. And you take your flat brush, pull it out a little. You can go back to another one, add some more. You can bless it, get some water in it. Let's do that same thing again. So it was Winsor, Aurelian, just moving down here, just getting this Quin gold. Okay, a little bit of this nice warm orange. And let's get up here and off the top. Get these two brighter colors in here. All right. Look at that. Now I have a sense of something coming forward, something going back. And it's definitely just two. Better get something third in here. Let's go with just a little bit of Winsor this time. And a little bit of Aurelian. And then let's go more to some of these colors that'll join them. Put it together. Let's put a softer one. I'm getting out to the edges, so I want to knock down the brightness on these edges so they're not screaming at the edges where I'm going out. So this is a little raw sienna. Okay. So that would be a basic way to get a shape within a shape and get a shape to grow. And at any point in time that I want to bump it up, add a little brightness to it, I can. Next thing I'm going to do is attend to my paper. You see what's happening here is I'm getting a ridge, so I'm getting it white right down the middle. That's because this paper is stretched and I didn't give it a chance to relax. If you're at home, you could go and give it a break so it relaxes longer, and that won't happen. The other thing you can do is roll it. And you can fold it. If it's too bright, you can spritz it. You want it to go off here, you want it to go off here. And you can fold it. That's what's fun about it. You can do all kinds of fun things that allow you to take a clean brush, bring that center. I want that out of the center. Look at that. Okay. So you see how I pulled that right out? So there's lots of ways to get an energy movement. Now this thing is moving along quite nicely. There's some real fun things happening. I'm going to take the big flat brush again, and I'm going to move in some of these colors in the background. So I'm going to start with cobalt violet. There's a lot of cobalt violets out there. I'd play around with them. You've got friends that you paint with. Get all your cobalt violets out one day and say, let's see what we've got for cobalt violet. And you'll find out that you'll like the Sennelier, or you'll like the Janet Rogers, or I want to cool this corner down a little. So I'm going to bring in a blue with this. Remember, if it puddles or something, it doesn't matter. Because I haven't decided. A little cobalt. Here's a little trick I learned a long time ago. If you come in high on one side, go out low on the other. See how that pulls you across the picture and stretches you out and makes you enjoy the whole surface? Now remember the most important thing about abstract. You've got this whole dance floor. You're not going to just dance in the middle. You're going to play all over this. Think of a professional ice skater, how they travel across that rink. That's what you're doing. You're just skating on this wet, lovely surface, and it allows you to get this wonderful pattern and rhythm going. There. So, bring it back up here. There you go. Now I'm going to take my my towel. I don't have enough paint on here. At this point, I've only got maybe 50% of the paint on. I can't move it around because I don't have enough paint on here. I gotta be brave. I might take some of the water out of my brush, and I do that by pulling it out. And I might grab some more. Oh, I've got a nice piece of that's a little great. Don't care for that much, so we'll go over it with something else. I love manganese glue. I use it a lot, manganese, especially against this yellow. I think it's a real pretty color. Okay, that helps. Now, I'll take my clean brush, take the water out of it, and it's thirsty. And what I could do is I can begin to pull this out. I can take this because the paper's wet underneath and lift it, but I don't rinse it out. I use it someplace else. I can pull this white. I can come in here and pull this and bring it back, flip the brush over, pull this and bring it back. When I start pulling the paint off, that's a really good time to remember that what I want is to have this start to dry back. So if I remember just lifting one corner, slipping that on, there. Now this wooden board is porous. It's going to start to just take that water out of that, and this thing's going to dry real quickly. I have a nice diamond or triangle shape happening here. I want to counteract that, so I want to come up here and make something special out of that. I really like to have different colors going around those. It's definitely a flower, isn't it? These three yellows are really strong. white water, allows you to lift it off. Place it someplace else. It's a little bit like sculpture at this point. Good time to come back with some positive shapes again. So the color can be both positive, as in here, can be negative. This is where the orange and blue makes this gray. Good time for me to decide how that white's going to carry across. Flowers have edges if I'm doing flowers. Cool it down with just a little green. Purple and green are beautiful together. Now, at home I have a round table and I usually work full sheets so I can move this around and see it. I'm just going to do it quickly. You can see it's almost going pretty nice as a vertical, maybe even better. I see I have my white shape coming right down the center, so I'm going to change that a little bit. This reading is one big shape. I'm not real fond of that. There. Oh, and these like to play games with you. Sometimes they look better when you turn them around completely. it's better upside down. That's the wonderful thing about intuitive painting. There, I got two shapes, a big shape here and now a second and then a third over here, which I like better. I kind of lost my purple. This is definitely about yellow at this point. Let me show you some of this wet line drawing. Take your brush and just dry that, and you can open up any area that you'd like. I'm acting like I'm afraid of the center today, probably because I'm not as centered as I would be at home. And I like to kind of follow some of these edges. Let's move down to a smaller brush now, see if we can make this is a place where it's called chaos. Doesn't have to be as complex as this. Just wait to come down. And I don't want many boundaries. That's why I'm doing a lot of this. I don't normally do this much of this. It's a little harder finding it today. When I started this, I was doing it all by myself after going through a divorce, and it brought me a lot of comfort and a lot of joy just to do it like George O'Keeffe said. I could just do what I wanted to do. I could just play with it. I could just transform that white paint into some kind of a sand castle, and maybe it'll work, maybe it won't work. And I have to be willing to accept the chaos. Have to be willing to accept the
fact that it may or may not turn out as I like, you know, it kind of parallels life like that. So I kind of get the colors where I need them and then shape them so it can be behind like that one. It can pull and jump like this. It can swing out like that. I remember all those ones that have flowers, like the one behind me. All of that can be put in after it's dry. This is the negative painting, just the last step of it. Now I'm seeing I'm seeing two things happening here. I'm seeing I was originally thinking of the source of light as being one source, or a source of inspiration or whatever. Now I'm seeing I really have two going on here, which I rather like. To get this nuance in the final picture, all of this color that you saw me put on, move around, take here or there, because it's wet, the paper's wet, it allows me to really make an ethereal picture. It doesn't have to be a precise, really snap it out kind of thing. And then as you can see, I'm going smaller and smaller. I got a lot of and put it on where I want it, and then move it around. Sometimes they can go in, sometimes the shape can change. This thirsty brush, there. And we'll get in close so you can see how subtle some of this stuff is. To make it more, show up more, you just lift it off. That's what I like about it. If it's too much, you say, take away. If it needs something in front of another thing, add another color. If it needs a bigger line, go in there. If it needs a shadow. Geez, there's nothing to like lay that brush flat. It'll allow you to go in and get underneath some of these things. Seems to be kind of a seed-like pod that's coming out of the center there. And from these original, I always like to say it was what I read that made a difference when I did my devotions in the morning. What great person I was reading to help me make sense of my life and the world at large. So all of that softens me and changes me, and I'm not so rigid. I think I like that. Let's go back this way. Oops. That's another thing. You gotta hold your brush so lightly. So just like as you learn and change, and the more you learn about art, the more you evolve. That's the good news. It makes your world larger. Think of all the trips that Carolyn and I go on. It's just been such a blessing in my life. Makes my world large and colorful. An awful lot of shapes in here. I think it's time for me to let it dry back and then come in with that negative painting. I'm doing a little negative painting. You can do this as long as you want. I like to think of the things I do and the things I read as making sort of my paintings blossom. I think I haven't really stuck with these. I've really stuck with these these flat brushes for a very long time. Getting an awful lot of pieces in here, but it's now taking a little shape. Okay, I'm going to let it set and settle down here now until it's dry. Then I'll come back and show you just a few of how I tie it together. It's so much fun, it's really hard to quit. Anytime you want to bring somebody's eyes down, just punch out that value, like I did here. And that original yellow, which was really strong, I can come right off and back almost to a pure white. Look at that. And if you want it a little more playful, you want to introduce some more line. So bleed back. Okay. Well, I think that's enough for right now. I think we got a lot going on here. It's a lot more of a riotous painting. I think it's all the things we've got going on that makes it. The more you have going on in your life, the busier paintings sometimes get to be. So it kind of did that. But it has a nice passive light. It's a really pretty light painting. So, thank you, and I'll come back and do a little negative painting and see if we can pull this together. Thank you. Now my watercolor has had a chance to dry, so I can finish it up and create the patterns that I so enjoy doing. We're going to just reflect for a moment on how wet this piece got because I was doing it so quickly. Normally, if I were taking my time, it would have dried back more. So I'm going to just tell you what I've envisioned for this. First, there's a lot more chaos than I thought, so I had to do a lot more problem solving. And this is a chance for you when you say you're fixing a painting that what to do next, what the composition needs, and that sort of thing. So that's what I've had an opportunity to do. I could see that this center energy coming back up from the sky. I went back to having this picture be the way I started it. And I know that because I had originally had this arches watermark in the lower left-hand corner, so that gives me a way to come back to home base. So with my little puddles made, I'm going to come in here and say I still like this energy coming and zooming through here. In order to accomplish that, I'm going to imagine that if energy was swooshing through, it would have a counter energy that would go this way and this way. So I'm going to take this where it's so purple here, and I'm going to
add a glaze. The glaze is simply clean water, a small amount of hue, a transparent paint, and you just come in here and get a background. So I'm doing kind of a feeling of this being behind here. And this will become a different color every place its color changes. But I want it to bring the blue from here, swooping across here. And now you'll see how that white really pops when I just change this value a little bit. So that's bringing this. I'm going to do the same thing over here. So coming across here, I can continue with this, grab some water, flow it in, because I'm constantly playing with light against dark and dark against light. Those are my two choices as a watercolorist. And this ended up with the theme of this that I've been working on here the last 4 or 5 weeks, which is the celestial blossoms. What's the origin of the beauty behind flowers and what they look like when they're in full bloom? How about the orchids? How about the roses? And of course my favorite, gladiolas. Okay, look at how that brought all that together, just with those mid-tones. Pulled all that together. I'm going to move over here now, and these are kind of tumbly shapes. So here where it's purple, let's bring in a little blue. Let's make a kind of an attractive edge. And I'm not real fond of this shape, so I'm just going to throw some value on that. And remember what these little puddles were. The colors on my palette were the same ones that I started with. I'm not changing my palette. I've got cobalt blue, I've got cobalt violet with a blue hue, and cobalt violet with a warm hue, and permanent magenta up here if I want to go much darker. So as I come in here on this dry paper, I can create all kinds of shapes that people will recognize and enjoy. But I'm not giving them the whole thing because it's basically a flower abstract. But look at how that pulls that way. Now if I go so long, it's warm, then I change its temperature. I love changing its temperature. So you just saw me go from warm to cool in one passage. And then this can become the center of this flower. And basically at this point, changing the temperature and popping out. So let's pop out some more things. The tops of this one here is a little ragged. Come in here on this dry paper, allows me to give you a nice feeling of a bud. I like that. It's just popping out. This is not quite round enough. If I put blue on this, it'll be green. I'm not ready for a green, so I'll put purple on it, and that will gray it because the complements gray each other, yellow and purple. When I get into an area where a point is, if I want to accentuate that, I'll just drop the opposite. In this case, the cool blue against the warm violet. Well, I think that resolved a lot of things in there. I'm going to let this be quite chaotic. I'm learning to live with more chaos in my life and not getting bothered with it, which makes it a little bit more like an abstract, of course. The more I say flowers, the more realistic it becomes. So I want to be more in this origin state, or beginning, or memory. You can see how this all looks like these are coming down to the planet. I want you to look here. I would use the true opposite, the purple. Look at that. See how that pops that right out? It says, look at me, look at me. This is a little boring and unresolved here. So let's continue with our glazing. Going from warm to cool and warm to cool. Pretty warm there. Let's go to cool here. You resolve everything, you don't give them anything to enjoy after they've owned your painting for a year or two. It's kind of a good thought, isn't it? And look at how this freshens and emboldens this picture. And I've worked now in this mid-range. I'm going to try to decide if this needs a warm or a cool corner. I've got a lot of warm in here. Let's cool it down. Let's change it to manganese blue. So I'll make a little puddle of light here, come out here, and I'll cut around these shapes where I accidentally dripped water and just allow them to live for a while. And if I don't like them, I can knock them out later, but I'm sort of enjoying these little particles in space. That was a good choice. So if that one's cool, it's okay for this one down here to be warm. And that would give me a dynamic pull again between the two. Remember, as you solve things, you're solving them the way artists have always solved them. By knowing your elements of design and principles of design, knowing your media, practicing with it, no different than anybody that plays music. All right, now I've resolved a lot of things on the parameters of this picture. I almost have a cruciform going in here too. Maybe I'll have multiple color schemes and multiple design elements. That'll be kind of fun. That's pretty complicated. Let's go back here and get a few of these going here again. Look at that. This is negative painting at its best. If you draw it first, it's not negative painting. You're drawing an image and you're painting it around it. Negative painting is when you're dancing with this flat paintbrush or any brush that's your choice. I prefer the flats. And you're dancing with it like this, and you are thoroughly enjoying yourself. Look at that, see? Thoroughly enjoying creating a new edge, creating a new shape by going around it, which is your only choice in watercolor when it's lighter than. See? Look at that whole passage, just became all of these things coming down. Now it wants to have a little more warm up in here, and here, and here. Now what am I going to do with this center? Well, what came to me was that in the midst of all these flowering forms coming towards you and at you, that probably what I would like to see is just some soft white little flowers with centers. And you can't really see them from a distance because I'm really after big shapes. That's what my pictures are about. It's the big picture, this big cosmic intention that flowers are gorgeous and flowers are beautiful and that they make our lives richer and fuller. And so now as an artist, I'm just using these flowering form shapes to create these illusional paintings, which then create a space that's pleasant to live with. These are really nice meditation pieces in your living room or in quiet ones in your bedroom or whatever. That's mostly where people put them. So I'm going to start in here with some cobalt blue with a little warm in it, very, very light. And I'm going to put just a little center in it. And I'm going to take the thirsty brush, pull it out, and just bring it back, because this is going to be ever so little. And each one is going to have just a little bit different center. This one's a little redder, this one's a little bluer.
and then pull that out one side or another. And you'll have to come up close in this picture. So you have something to look at when you're way away, and you have something to look at when you come up close. Now to make it pop out more, I have to come in here with some kind of a gray. Here's a nice one. Get some of the water out of the brush. Come in here and just let some of these things pop out. And keep a tissue handy. If you put it on there and you don't like it, you can come right back in and bring it up. Now when I was starting this, and I wasn't this brave that I could just start creating things and hoping they work out. And that was a really good time for me to get my photographs of my flowers out, or paintings that I had done of flowers, and go back and revisit them and say, now what is that shape of an orchid? What is that shape of a whatever flower I was thinking in terms of. So it's not my intention in this one to create a particular flower, but only the shapes and the origins of flowers. And the longer I paint, the purer the color is. But in this case, these soft grays really can create very nice shapes. And you can just make all kinds of things happen in here. I'm more interested in pulling you around than having you stay put. I'm after the energy of the piece. Once in a while, you're doing these, and you can do a picture in 20 minutes, and it's just gorgeous. And it would have been fun if I could have bandstand and had that happen in this case, but it didn't. So you're going to see me problem solve and work a little harder than I had expected to. Now I'm doing the tug, the push, the pull, get me from here to there, the subtle things that happen. Here's another flower with a center. Leading you around. I got all these wonderful colors. Look at these beautiful grays on here. They're happening by using the complements. Carolyn and I went off and took a workshop with a man named Robert E. Wood from California when we were young women. And it was a master class. We'd been, of course, had degrees in art, had been painting a long time. And he comes into the class and he says, okay, here's the deal. If it's too warm, cool it down. If it's too cool, warm it up. If there's too many shapes, make fewer.
Okay, I'm going to return to just explaining a little bit about what's going on or not going on in this painting. And what I've attempted to do is to move my energy away from that center, but for this one, for some reason, is really hanging in there. And I could have taken a little more time to plan how to come out on that second ring. I wanted to come out here and come out here. But this is just a little wet for me to put that last really dark detail in, which should bring it around, and we'll call that good enough for this. And this is a really good lesson from the standpoint that when you do these, you might end up not liking it, and not liking it as well as something you did earlier in the week or a month ago or whatever. But it takes a passage, and it takes a life of its own. It might take you to a whole new series of paintings that are just around the corner. So don't throw them away and don't get frustrated. Take and put them up and look at them. And when you look at them, look at, like George O'Keeffe said, I'm going to put 4 or 5 of them together. Look at them and see now what is happening. What's going on that I'm really enjoying? And one of the things that I really enjoyed was looking at how cool I could make a picture and how warm I could make a picture. So I'd like to come back to that right now and show you that, and then I'll finish this one up. Here are 2 half sheets that I did this last week. And this one is predominantly warm colors, and this one is predominantly cool colors. This is a orange and blue complements, and this is yellow and purple complements. And for the first time, I think what happened in this one and why it feels so warm is that I was able to use the complements yellow and purple in such a way that they actually had a tension between them, and yellow is about the same amount as the purple, and they're not fighting each other, but they're still complementing. So it's much more of a cooperative painting. I came back and I did a lot of detail. I liked how that white was a lovely shape that was coming and transposing the composition. I liked how it came off the bottom. I liked how it came off the top. So there are themes in here that really worked for me. In this one, I tried to stay cool, and I was using about 4 or 5 different blues, and you can see them move in and out of the picture. And I was able to get many themes going on. So this is a theme here. There's another related theme going on here, another one here, and another one here. So it's a little quieter area here that allows to take you off. And that's what's not happening in the demo that I did for you. But when I think about it and say, okay, well, I'm moving along here, and what happened? It's a kind of a good lesson for me to share with you that they don't always work to the quality I'd like them to be. And so I end up with lots of stacks of them at home. But fortunately, my son is an artist, and he likes to gesso them and use them for his oil crayons, so the paper isn't wasted. But I would really recommend thinking about the themes, thinking about what you want to paint, and then painting by yourself, so you can take lots of time to analyze it, let it happen, let it come forth. And these I'm pretty happy with. So I'm going to come back now and say, what made this work? It's this great big delicious shape going through here that's just as nice as this. And what made this shape work is I came back with darker colors and came under and made them into interesting shapes. So this one is coming in, this one is going down, this one's going up here, this one's covering this way, this one's coming this way. All of that is a real folding and unfolding, like you would think of universal energy, that's the way it would be. So as you look at these and as you move through and look for shapes, come in, move out. So here it's a positive shape, the orange. Here it's a negative shape, the orange. Here's a positive shape of yellow, and here it's coming across here, just echoed through there. So that's kind of how these will evolve and change and take a life of their own. Now, a number of artists who do intuitive painting and just count on what's in their heart at that time, or what colors they're enjoying, or what's in their own environment. A lot of them will set them up on in their studios and look at them for a while, and then they'll walk in one day and they'll say, that's what that was supposed to be. And they'll go ahead and paint that in at that point in time. And that's a good way, but usually I stay with it until from beginning till end and complete one picture in one day. So we're going to go back to this purple one and see if I can put some darks in and
get a path of light, and also see if I can find a few more negatives that are just kind of a little more exciting than the shapes that I did. Okay, I'm back with my watermark here, and as I set it aside to dry, I set it the other way around. Let's take a look. There it is. It's actually liking it better this way again. So I'm going to take and come in with my final darks, and it's a question about how to mix that dark, how to get this to go with the yellows. It has to have a purpley scent. I have to have two puddles. One puddle that will give me the blues feeling, and one puddle that will give me the purple feeling. So I'm going to come back with two. I'm going to pull that color out. Since it's dark, I think I'll stick with the, by putting a little French ultramarine blue in there. That's going to do it. I've mixed up some permanent magenta and some French ultramarine blue, which gives me a really nice dark. And when I want to gray it, I have to have a nice dark yellow to mix it. See how that knocks it down? So those are my puddles. Here's my grayed puddle, here's my dark violet puddle, and here's my blue puddle. I'm going to go through here now and just see if I can't find some way to bring you in and out of this picture that's a little more pleasant. You have two choices now. You can come in with water first. This is usually a pretty safe thing to do. If you wet this first, then come back. Look how soft that is. And the second choice is to put it on first, but then you have to attend to it right away. Now let's see if we can resolve this with some fresh color. So let's try the wetting this all first. Taking a smaller brush, having this a little warmer. Whoa. And catch that other side. Watching front and the back. Okay. Now this is not an interesting shape, so we can either chisel out the back or we can chisel out the front. Let's try a little chiseling right through here. All right, this last step then is a process where I'm going to take the sweet spots in the painting, like here and here and through here, right where I want you to look. And I'm going to just take a thin, smaller brush and continue with that same flowering idea, stems, petals, things, and see if I can make this a little more graceful. Where I'm going to kind of close my eyes, what's called soft eyes, and see if I can get back to the idea of the original shape, which was just this line coming, moving, going here and there. Like here's a place getting close to the edge, then I'll gray it down, add some water, gray it down, soften it. Doesn't have to be this noisy out here at the edge, but I'm trying to keep my eye on the line of the entire painting, the gracefulness of it, the swoop of it. And sometimes that's kind of hard to do unless you're just in a high energy state where you're enjoying yourself. So soften that on this side, bring it back. Soften it on this side, bring it back. And just touch it a little bit here to bookend it. Grab some water, flush it out, bring it in here, let it come out again. Now we want this to kind of fold over and be graceful. We'll come in here with this little brush, just catch some of those. Maybe this one's a daisy or some kind of a petaled flower. It's not a particular flower, but the essence of a flower. With all that color underneath there, if you can make these connecting shapes, if you can stay in a place of joy and just having fun bringing them around, and then as you go off the bottom, just allow them to soften. Go out to the side. And all that underneath, all that pretty color we've been putting on here all along, it's just allowing us to negative paint and have beautiful colors underneath. That's the fun of it. So you're going to struggle with it. There's going to be times when you say, well, I don't know where it's going, it's just complete chaos, what do I do next? Stay with it. Stay with it. Strip yourself back to the point of seeing the big shape of it, and you finish up with some lovely little details. Move yourself around in your chair so that you see this and that. At home on my round table, I walk around it, keep the entire thing balanced. Keep a sense of joy. That main thing is I've left that color on my palette. I needed it. You get too many shapes, and you just have to take a big brush and go right over them, let them go out. Remember that this isn't so much about flowers. I think that's where I was lost for a little while in this painting, because I was thinking flowers rather than energy. I was thinking flowers rather than, I wasn't thinking, what's the big joy of it? How can I have fun with this? How can I move this around and get back to some of these ethereal shapes, or shapes you'd see in the northern lights, the shapes you'd see in the night sky, and especially this week, what was happening in the sky. Just a little tiny dot will be here, a little tiny dot will be there. A little brighter color will be someplace, like in here, just for a little bit. And then coming down. And when you get really close, if you study, you should know there's over 1,000 miniature orchids in Costa Rica. You have to look at them with a magnifying glass. And they're just entire worlds of line, shape, and color. And you go, how can that be? How can that be? How can they be so tiny? And have all that energy and all that beauty, and what happened to that would cause that? Where did that initial energy come from? How it creates the rich variety in our lives and makes our lives so delightful. And playing these colors together, having all this on my palette allows me to come in here and just say, oh, I know what that is. I know what that is. That's fun. It's just when you think a design is lost, just when you think it's over, you turn the corner and the chaos goes away. Harmony comes back. That's what it's about. It comes from all those hours as a child watching the sky. Too bright? You get to decide. Whoa. Slip some of that off. Maybe the tissue itself will make a pattern that's nice. Oh, it did. Little spotty, so we'll come in with some blue again. You can play with these for an awful long time or until you have to go make dinner. Let's have something fun happening down in here. Let's have another layer. Let's change the temperature. Change the hue. Change the brush. And as I get up here, I want to be a little quieter. Get back to the middle, I want to be a little noisier. And warmer. These take on many different lives, just like the night sky. All the traveling Carolyn and I do, one of the things that's so comforting is that the sky and the sunsets are common to everyone, everywhere. So looking for rhythm in nature. And then this is the kind of painting where you have to lean over to your painting buddy and say, can I be done? Can I be done?
It's beautiful. I think you gotta think of it.
All right. All right. Now, you can always tweak them with coming back with a little Q-tips. Coming back with a little scrubby brush. Just as long as you want. Just depends on how finished you like your pictures to be. I have some that only took 20 minutes to paint, and they were done, and they said, just leave me alone, I'm fine this way.
This dry completely so that I could do more negative painting. And before I went back in and started my last darkest darks, I took that opportunity to creatively take and soften some lines. The hard lines made it look like a cutout. And I love the sense of pushing the water against, from the white against into the dark, and it makes a little ridge or a line. As you know, line is the hardest thing in transparent watercolor. And I like the sense of line, so that gives you a nice sense of a roundness and with a line that's between the white and the dark. So that's a really fun thing. I might have overdone it. I was having so much fun. It's the typical thing when you get going on these are so wonderful to play with and so fun to enjoy that you just sort of keep going. Notice that I have what's called a scrubby brush. And you can make one by any oil painting brush or any stiff bristle brush and just cut it off and you're ready to go. I'm about ready for a new one. And then the idea of what I just told you is, let's say that I wanted this line to be whiter right here. If I take and push that, with this brush, I keep cleaning it in my water and then clean it off and dry it, or leave it a little moist. If it's not moist enough, just tap it like that to keep the drips off. And I can move this around. Remember, I'm working on Arches 140 cold press paper. And that is what you paid for. It allows you to change your mind. And when you're doing these intuitive paintings, you decide, oh, I want this, oh, I want that. And at home, when I'm doing this without a camera, of course, and I'm just thoroughly enjoying myself, I just push this around and I turn this around and I see it from here and there. I love it when I can just, when I can just take this and move this around and hold it and just pull it and push it, then touch it with a tissue, picks that right up. So notice what I just said. If I wanted to have this shape, a shape that's on top of another shape. Like here, I want this on top of this. Then I have to break that line and bring that across, and that really resolves what's in front and what's back. Let's show you that again. Let's say I want this shape on top of this shape, or I want this shape on top of that. Once I decide who gets to be on top, then I push the other one behind. Here, that's whiter, I come from behind. Okay? Pushing this so it's a different value. So the yellow is a 2 here and this is a 1. Let's take this right here. Let's say that I wanted to take this leaf here and fold it that way. So I come this way and I push this, and that throws this back. This is on top now, and that stays back. I love that folding. Look at this little line here. If I take and get a clean little spot like this, clean, scrubby, clean, I can push that and create a line. If I decide I want this to be a petal this way, like most flowers are multiple petals, I can come this way and push a line. Of course, again, I can roll the paper around. It's easier for me, but then it's harder for you. So we'll do it easier for you right now. So that pulls that out.
So I've taken a lot of liberty to really soften a lot of those quick hard edges that I put in. I loved them here, so I left them alone, but I just cleaned up those tips. So you can take this scrubby brush and then clean up at a light any place you want. Soften an edge, put one shape on top, push another shape back, get rid of a line, bring back a white. Oh, I love to play with this. I can do this for hours. It's a great way of entertaining myself. Let's look at that. Pull that back. You've got a great paper here. Take advantage of it. I sort of break all the rules when it comes to people saying you can't change a watercolor. I change them all the time. I love it. Now I sound like Carlin, don't I? Look how I can just clean up anything with a fresh tissue, then get rid of that, get a new tissue. Anytime you want a white, get in there and scrub it, touch it, clean it. And don't let anyone tell you that you can't push a watercolor around, make it come back into what you like. Now again, I had a theme. And the theme here is this, from some source, these flowers are just bursting, coming forward. And it looks to me like I've got a lot of pretty straight yellow and purple. And I have two choices. I can either let this sit for a while and come back and look at it, or I can say, you know, I'd really like to just take a small flat brush now, something I can really chisel around with. I'm really fond of my 1/2 flat here. I can take and I can go back to this cobalt violet, and I'm even going to jump in here with some permanent rose and put that beside. You see, permanent rose is much warmer than cobalt violet. And now I can do some glazing again. What would I like to warm up? Where would I like it to have some? And it seems to me that I don't want it way out here on these edges because that would take you off. So with this cobalt violet, I'm going to come in here. So I'm going to be quiet for a while and just kind of think about how I can turn some of these in key spots warmer. Now I have a tissue and I can lift it off right away if I don't like it. So let's come in here and just warm this up. Let's come in here and just warm this up. I think when I left you the last time I said if it was too cool, warm it up. That's what we're doing now. And just touch it to break it a little. Great.
how that warms this picture up. Whoa, too much. First thing I said in this lesson is that for me it's really about kind of a dynamic energy that's going to pull me here and there. Oh, let's make it a little cooler on this side. Ooh, that's pretty cool, isn't it? It's a little bit green. But we need a little relief from all that purple. I think I'm liking that. Now it feels to me that's a little muddy up in here, even though I like that area a lot, or even down in here. Could go from here to here. So I'm here, it's sort of like a city where it's real busy and then, you know, downtown, and then you've got this belt line, and then you've got the open area. So I'm going to kind of think about that. So let's cool this down right in here. Let's see how we're going to repeat. Little tiny brush. And that really pops these out. Now I'll cool it down a little more with a little more green here. That gets you right down into this whole section. Let's clean that brush a little. Oh, I didn't have to. Just a little cool it down here, put a little green. Wow. See that negative painting? How rich that is? You know, if you've ever pulled up a tender plant or you're going to replant it in the spring, how tender those little roots are, how small they are. Gives somebody something to look at if they come right up to the painting. So this is my last 1 to 2% of the painting process here. I'm just taking this puddle of green and red as my darkest dark recipe and allowing some of these centers to really get deep, move back, and then soften it. Also, this becomes a neutral gray, and this was such a hot painting because of the colors that this neutral gray can really help it out. Bring that out. Seems like this has gotten a little heavy here, so let's work on that a little. My puddle is really getting watered down. But this
This is sort of like things you see on the beach. Those nice neutrals way up in there. This is kind of an odd shape in here. Let's see if we can't come in here with some neutrals. Push that back a little. Oh, much better. And if we need to warm it up, we just have a little more red in there. If we need to cool it down, we just move over to that. And then, oh, that's really rich. Ooh, that made a lovely little negative pattern. I think this is, I like the beginning and I like the end. The middle is problematic for me, as you probably noticed on the video. Now I'm back to really having a good time. And I'm so grateful, you know? You come into life, you come into an environment that's already there. And you have to decide what you're going to do with it. That's kind of why I put all that color on right off the bat. Too dark, I just touch it with a tissue. And this is so much fun, like each of the steps, that I tend to overdo them. But look at how lively that got up there. I like to push the boundaries. So I get an awful lot going on. Big center and then big outside, and pretty soon it's just a busy painting. Look at this little part in here, needs just a little bit in there, then flush it out, draw it out. Look at how energetic that is now, just by stepping up my last puddle to a gray or darker than the other colors allowed me. Pulling you out into the belt line here of this painting. It's okay to have that coming right off there like that. Let's turn it green a little. I'm almost always working with a dual puddle that's warm and cool, so I can decide, now it's warm, now it's cool. I'm not so sure about this shape in here. Let's take that 1/2 inch flat. See if I can't come in here with some kind of a mid-tone here. Gray. Much better shape. And this is pretty dark next to this real light. Let's change the value. Much better. Cool it down right here. Throw some pure green in there. You're using color at the very end like this, rich color like I just did with this green. Sometimes people refer to that as jewel color. You come right in. Probably heard that term before. See how rich that makes it? Wherever I want you to look, I turn that into a stamen or something. If I want to push it back with a little green, it's going to push it back. It's a little dark right between them, so let's just touch it with a tissue. And let's bring it up here a little. So now by making these rich with more of this jewel color and where it's warm, making it cool, so there's a change in temperature, gets your attention when the temperature changes. One of the interesting things about this technique, this style of painting, is that when you add this point, when you add a stroke, you can almost be sure that it's going to change the painting, and the painting's going to have a number of lives through it, just like your own life. The painting's going to go through many different stages. So, because I didn't pre-plan it, I have something that never existed before. This is that negative painting, and these things to me are sort of like the web of life. Carolyn and I were spending a lot of time talking about our ancestors this morning. It's sort of like ancestors coming down and still part of your life because you remember them and they show up in lots of different ways. The key is to have them as beautiful as possible. So this is what I call jewel color, and it's the very last thing I do. I told you that putting in the darks were, but that wouldn't be right. Putting on the jewelry is the last thing. Look at how that green just pops this out. Now I'm going to sign off, and I hope I'll see some of you and paint with you and meet you and encourage you, all the fun things we do as artists, so that you can enjoy this wonderful, wonderful color wheel. Enjoy your brushes. Doesn't matter what this is, the only thing that matters is that I had a good time painting it. And if you have a good time looking at it, that's wonderful. And if you like things that are different than this, that's wonderful too. Okay, the last thing I always do when I'm around Carolyn is ask her, what do you think, Carolyn? Because she always has some really good ideas.
I think you pulled it together. Those added darks were really great, especially like these little seeds and that stuff. That's really nice. Really nice.
Good.
Yeah, I
Good.
think you're done.
Good, I get to sign my name then?
You get to sign your name
All
and
right.
sign off.
Thanks, Carolyn, it's been a good time.
Thank you.
I think my name has to go over here, because I don't think I left any room over here. All right, well, thank you and happy painting. Well, thank you for watching, this was pretty fun. And I want you to know that it's just about impossible to do an intuitive abstract when you're dealing with starting the picture and saying, I'll let you take your own course, I'll let you go the way you want to go. It's pretty hard. You have to go through a chaotic period. You have to go through some chaos. And then when you get to the other side, you go, yes, yes. I never could have painted that picture because I never could have imagined it before. It never existed before. I'm giving the world something brand new that no one has seen before. And I think that's pretty special. So I invite just, it's just one more way to paint a picture, one more way to entertain yourself, but for me, it's the most fun. So it was a pretty